Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and the co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases, the good, the bad, the really awful. But you know what? We always have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
Sometimes I stick up for titles that you don't like, which will happen in this episode.
I feel like, yeah, I have a feeling that's going to be happening very soon. But hey, you know what? It's with love, it's with respect, it's all good. Um, my first title is The Best of Times. And was it the best of times? Was it though, really? Um, I believe this doesn't have anything else going on inside, just like the movie. Am I right?
Nope. Getting right into it, I see.
Um, yeah, so kind of as we alluded to, you reviewed this previously in your standalone episode while I was at Comic-Con. Did a great job. I mean, I'm a little biased. I feel like it's not as good because I'm not in it, but good. Um,
Don't weigh in on the comments. We don't want division amongst our ranks.
no, I want division, damn it. I was kidding. Um, but no, you reviewed this, and I know you like this. It seemed like a little bit more than I did, but um, so just jumping right in, I think that this is not very good. I found myself really having a hard time kind of connecting with characters. Everything was just so kind of over the top and in my face, and like I definitely think the best part about this movie is Robin Williams. Like he is in his prime. Uh, I did really like the scene, and I told you I'd be fair. I did really like the aerobic scene where he's like leading the aerobics thing. Like that's funny. Like that's like prime Robin Williams, like physical comedy. He's riffing. He's on. I just so I'm not a big sports person, so maybe that's it. And like this is a movie clearly sort of aimed towards boomers that were super nostalgic for like a certain time and place, like the good old days, but without kind of realizing that the good old days were kind of only good for like a small segment of people. So yeah, I don't know. I wanted to enjoy it. I mean, I liked Kurt Russell, but even his character I didn't find super endearing. Like I guess I did a little bit more towards the end, but kind of like Robin Williams, he's just so like neurotic over this football game. And I guess to me, I'm kind of like I don't have that sort of mentality where like my whole life and existence could just be completely splintered because I dropped a football for 30, 40 years ago. I don't understand that. So I think that's where I kind of had trouble sort of connecting with that particular world. But having said that, I do think there is some like funny moments. Again, I like the stuff with Robin Williams. I do kind of always like films that have this like local color that makes it kind of feel real. The town feels very much lived in and authentic. So I mean, I think all of that stuff's really good. It's just, it didn't connect with me, but here's your chance. Defend.
Like I told you, I'm not going to defend this vigorously, but anyone who's watched our show before knows that Mike hates movies with heart. So you can just,
No, that's not true.
it is my time to speak. Okay. No, I think it's a pretty good movie. I am also not a sports person. I don't watch sports besides like American soccer. But and that's just mostly around like the World Cup or whatever. But I love sports movies, and I don't understand the characters like getting fixated on this one specific moment that ruined their lives. But I can understand the mentality of letting your past like cloud your present, like being hung up on something in the past. Because these two men who they're both having issues with their wives because they're so fixated on what happened in the past that they can't appreciate what's going on in the present, and they're kind of like getting in their own ways and stuff. So I think it's mostly like a testament to figuring out what is actually important and like living in the moment. And yet I don't think it's nostalgic necessarily for the good old days necessarily. I think it's more so getting hung up on what could have been instead of just like appreciating what you have and stuff. And I do think Robin Williams, although very funny, he is operating at like more of a heightened register than a lot of the other cast members. So he's going on a lot of ridiculous runs that, like, while very funny, are not always normal. Like they're not in line with kind of the more tradition, like the mentality of the movie is more kind of even keeled, and he's like at an 11 sometimes, not as much as he is in some of his other performances. But yeah. I think it works for me. It's just kind of like emotional, like lightly humorous, not uproariously like funny small town piece. Like you said, like that local color worked for me a little bit more.
So just a friendly rebuttal. I do like movies with heart. It's just it has to be earned. It can't just be like cheap sentimentality for me. Like it has to have some like real pathos. And in fact, spoiler, my final film that I'm going to be talking about does have a lot of heart. So yeah.
Yeah, Mike's always going on like, oh, I love movies with heart, like Friday the 13th or something. I don't know, like your skewed view of heart.
Well,
you're like, oh, it was so heartwarming how much his mother cared for him that she would go on a comfort. It warmed my heart.
Oh, my sweet, innocent Jason, my only child. Jason.
Okay, fair enough. But I will defend myself where I do like movies that are maybe even a little bit even more on the like schmaltzy side. It's just, again, it's walking that fine line of making it feel authentic and earned. Like you need to have, when you're going for like the heartstrings, it just really needs to be firing on all cylinders. That's all I'm
saying. All right, you enjoy your heartless existence. Speaking of movies that Mike won't like because this has heart, this is the newest Sony release. It's a 4K upgrade of the Muppets Take Manhattan, like full of nostalgia and heart. So this is a movie. I've seen a lot of Muppets movies. I don't think I'd seen this one before, but I enjoyed this one. I think it's pretty amusing. It's kind of your classic Muppets tale where they have just graduated college, and they have like kind of like a show at college that's pretty successful, and they get the idea that maybe they should try to make it in the big city, and then they go to Manhattan to try to kind of pitch their stage play and everything. And along the lines, they meet there's a lot of celebrity cameos and like just kind of fun moments where after the initial round of pitching where they're getting rejections all around the town, they kind of all splinter off until they eventually do their own journeys apart from each other and eventually come back together to pretty much finalize, like come to the finale and all this stuff. But I really love the Muppets. I really like all of their adventures pretty well. I think if you're in like Christmas mood, like Muppets Christmas Carol is a classic, but then also just like even the remake of the Muppets movie with like, or the reboot with Jason Segel from like a decade ago, I really love that one as well. They're all pretty great. And so this was just another great addition. With the celebrity cameos, they're definitely a product of their time, but there's a lot of really interesting people. There's Joan Rivers, Art Carney, Dabney Coleman. I really like Dabney Coleman's because he's kind of playing like a huckster who's trying to con the Muppets out of their money, and it's like a really funny scene. There's James Coco, Gregory Hines, Linda Lavin, a lot of people in here. So maybe a lot of if there's any younger people watching this one, like teens, you might not recognize a lot of these names, but those who are more familiar with the era, you're like, oh, that's fun. So overall, this is basically a collection of like there is a through line. Like you have Kermit like starting to work at this diner with this young waitress who's like trying to work her way through fashion school, and Miss Piggy getting jealous of their friendship and everything. But what mostly makes this is just like all the random scenes with like each of the Muppets and what they're trying to do with their lives. There's a lot of like Rolf the dog working at a dog pound is very amusing. Just a lot of great stuff. So if you're a Muppets fan, I think this is another great entry for them on film. And this is their first entry into 4K. So I was very excited about that. And it looks really great. This is a new 4K scan of the original camera negative in Dolby Vision, and it looks fantastic. All the natural film grain is retained. It's all resolved very well. There's some really nice colors. Most of this takes place like during like the bright daytime, and colors really pop. Even like the grain in the sky is like resolved well. Sometimes like bright skies can kind of wreak havoc on certain transfers, but this works really well. The dark moments, they hold like really deep black levels. This actually has Dolby Atmos audio in addition to 5.1 audio and the original mono. So you have like 3 English language choices so if you want like the most expansive audio, like the most groundbreaking audio with like height channels and everything, you have that. Sounds great. Mostly those are implemented with like filling the room more fully with music, but there are little discrete little environmental implementations in the height channels. But no matter the track you choose, be it the new Atmos track or the original mono, you're in good shape. This includes all the previous special features, which there weren't that many from the original Blu-ray, but there was like a 15-minute interview with Jim Henson and some brief Muppetisms, which was like a 3-minute piece where you just get like little funny bits with the Muppets. But this release does come with a new special feature, which is a director audio commentary from director Frank Oz, which is pretty cool. So they did get a cool new special feature and like a trailer. So overall, if you're a Muppets fan, I think this is essential. Buy early because Sony slips go soon, and so you might want to get the slip cover, which is pretty nice. But either way, make sure you own this if you're a Muppets fan because it's great. And I know Sony doesn't own most of the rest of the Muppet stuff. A lot of that is with Disney, but I do hope that a lot of the Muppet stuff continues to get released on 4K because I love it so much. So if you're a fan, pick it up. Sony did a great job with it as per usual.
Nice. That is one I haven't seen in ages, so that would be really fun to revisit. And I'm glad to hear that it looks and sounds great, and it has some new features. So my next title, I feel split. I love this movie. I don't love the release. It's not bad, but we'll get into it. So this is the 60th anniversary of Black Sabbath. Now, as you may or may not know, there's 2 different cuts of this film. There is the original, and then there's the AIP version that was recut. What that means basically is they rearranged. So this is a horror anthology. So they rearranged some of the stories. And if I'm not mistaken, they also sort of trimmed down the lesbian storyline in the one, which I get confused because I'm so used to the original Italian version where that is the first story, but I think Drop of Water is the first story in this. So yeah, it's a great movie. I don't love the AIP cut. Again, you have like I like how the Mario Bava ordered his stories in the anthology. I think maybe it flows a little bit better. I really like having maybe not the strongest one first, which I still think is pretty good. It's like a giallo, and then they save the best kind of for last, and then they have that really cool fourth wall break with Boris Karloff at the end, which is such a cool treat. But I'm not a big fan of this cut. I wish. Well, anyways, I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the horror anthology. Of course, it is different stories. This has maybe one of my all-time favorites, A Drop of Water, which is like pants-shittingly scary. Like, I think it's really good, especially if you're a little bit of a chicken with horror stuff. Like, you watch this in the dark, just really set the mood. Ooh, just chef's kiss. The other one that's really good is the Vordelak, which that's the one with Boris Karloff. I'll send this picture to our editor Andre, but I found a really cool original lobby card with featuring that segment with Karloff, which is really awesome. Do I think they're all bangers? No, I think there's some that are a little bit better than the others, but overall the quality is fantastic. Mario Bava really set the stage for these stylish Italian horror films. It's kind of no secret that Dario Argento sort of drew in some inspiration as far as like the color palette and the look of his films, especially like his early work. And yeah, everyone kind of considers Bava like the grandfather of like the giallo, and the giallo being an extension of the slasher. Even like his Bay of Blood is considered a proto slasher that was done in a whole decade before Halloween. This has a port over from the commentary track and trailer, so there's nothing new on this. I believe that this is also the same transfer, which is good because that transfer was really good looking. It is a little bit old now, like that was from 2015. So I was kind of hoping for maybe like a new 4K, or really kind of wishing that we would get just like a 4K Ultra HD edition. We might not get that because maybe the film elements might not be really there to support something like that. But yeah, it was a little disappointing that we didn't get something that was like really substantial, no interior artwork. And I at least kind of wished they would have had both cuts. My thought is they're probably going to also re-release the Italian version as well as a standalone with slipcover. So yeah, I like I said, I love the movie. I don't love the AIP cut for numerous reasons, but it's still really good if you're a Bava completist. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know a bunch of Bava's stuff just went out of print over at Kino. So was this included in that? Did this just go out of print?
I think maybe that one went out of print, but maybe that was also because it was going to be released with this new version. So like they were just kind of preemptively retiring the old version for this new slip and all that stuff.
Yeah. So either way, if you kind of missed out, this is a really nice opportunity to own this. Again, the AIP cut isn't where it's at for me, but again, if you're a completist, you might want to have that. So yeah, I kind of just I don't love the reordering. I don't love that some of the like lesbianism was sort of trimmed out for like a wide audience, which is pretty cringe, but it's still a fantastic movie. I still recommend picking it up, especially if you want to supplement that with the original cut, just to kind of see like the difference.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't actually seen either cut before. So maybe since this is the one out right now, I'll check this one out, but hopefully they'll release the actual original version so I can kind of compare and then see the way it was actually intended to be seen. But I'm glad that they at least have a version in print for people to check out, even if it's not the preferred version. Yeah. My next title is another Sony title, and this is a 4K re-release, but we still love their re-releases because I usually upgrade them a little bit. This is a Steelbook 4K re-release of Godzilla from 1998. So I know this one is very controversial. I'll just kind of show. Here's like the back of the J card, which I'm sure Andre will probably put up on the screen. But here is the Steelbook without the J card. And here's the back. So you got the helicopter. And then you have the 4K and Blu-ray disc. And I'll let me take the disc out so you can kind of see the full artwork. The original 4K came out, I believe, in like 2019, I believe. I actually did not own that one, so I cannot really do a full comparison on how that compares to this one. I can only judge it on this one. And this is a really good release. But first, I'll kind of dig into the movie, which is kind of probably the most controversial element about this release is people don't really seem to like the movie. And I can understand why. for like hardcore Godzilla fans, it's really a lacking Godzilla movie. I had not seen this one since I was a kid in the 90s whenever it came out. And so I was interested to revisit it, especially in 4K. Is it a good Godzilla movie? No, because it doesn't have the classic Godzilla design. It's more like strictly lizard-like than like the kind of towering monster that you usually see. And also, not to spoil too much with this movie, I'm not sure what constitutes a spoiler, but it doesn't solely focus just on Godzilla for like the back half of the movie. It kind of evolves. This is just the most minor spoiler, so go like 10 seconds ahead if you're sensitive about this. But like, if you ever wonder, like, what if Godzilla was pregnant and you have to deal with that fallout? It kind of turns, what this movie basically turns into is if you view it not as a Godzilla movie, but view it as like a creature feature that's kind of along the veins of like Jurassic Park, I think you'll have more of a better time with this one. If you think of this strictly as a Godzilla movie, I think you're gonna be very disappointed. It's still not a great movie, but it's entertaining for what I think it's trying to do. This is Roland Emmerich, who's like always blowing shit up in his movies, just like creating a giant lizard destroys New York City type of movie. And you have a few notable actors along the way. You have Matthew Broderick in the lead role, and Jean Reno, who's like a French like intelligence agent, and a bunch of pretty good actors doing their best to make this material interesting. You have two alumnus of The Simpsons. You have Harry Shearer and Hank Azaria, which every time Harry Shearer like was doing the news reports, because he played a news reporter, I just kept thinking of his news reporter on The Simpsons, because like you just would hear the voice a lot of the times. I'm just like, it feels like I'm watching the episode of The Simpsons. It's crazy. But as a creature feature, I think it does a good job. It doesn't hold up a lot, like very well in the special effects department. I think it's best when it's working with practical effects. Whenever you see more like a strictly digital, like crushing the city and stuff, it looks its age. It looks like it was made in the late 90s, but it holds up well enough. It's not an embarrassment, but you can definitely tell like, oh, this was an earlier effort. But then they do some practical things that I think are pretty cool, especially like whenever some of like the smaller creatures are like breaking out of the eggs and stuff. It's just like you can kind of see that practical effects work and all the goop and stuff, which I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like this. Not a great movie, but a pretty fun movie if you like that kind of like creature feature. But just, yes, call it Godzilla to get butts and seats, but don't call it Godzilla for what the actual content is. I think that's what made this have such a bad reputation. So, like I said, this was released on 4K previously, not in Steelbook, just in a standard form. I do not have that, like I said, but the addition to this one, there's no new special features. This carries over like the original Blu-ray that was released over a decade ago, which has like some featurettes and a commentary track with the visual effects expert, and I think like some behind the scenes stuff, a music video. The 4K disc is basically the same. It has Dolby Atmos audio and the original 5.1. Where this is an upgrade for some people who are capable of it, this has Dolby Vision now, where the original was just HDR10. You get Dolby Vision, which I'm not sure, like I said, I can't judge the degree of the upgrade, but usually Dolby Vision kind of finesses some of the elements, maybe tame some highlights here and there, maybe gets a little bit deeper black levels, just enriches the colors a little bit more. This is a very overcast movie. There's a lot of rain, a lot of gray skies, but this is able to bring out a lot of definition within the picture. And I think this looks fantastic on 4K. It looks very nice, and it actually makes you appreciate the movie a little bit more just by how visually stunning it is. So whatever deficiencies maybe the narrative you may feel lacks, visually it's a very striking movie, and I think it looks very nice and natural, and the Dolby Vision presentation looks very good. So if you don't own it and you're interested for like a decent creature feature, I think it's worth getting this for the best version. If you already have it on 4K, weigh how important Dolby Vision is to you, because that's pretty much the main reason to upgrade this. I having not owned it before, I think I would have picked this one, but the choice is with you, because I can't say the movie itself is like an all-timer. So go with what you feel the movie deserves.
Go with Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, no, that's awesome and everything. I was kind of hoping like maybe the back of the steelbook would feature just like that big pile of fish.
Oh, yeah.
That would be really fun. Yeah, I don't know. So I haven't seen this in a while, but I just seem to recall being very boring, and that's not good when you're talking about a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, but I do feel you see Godzilla more in this one than like the 2014 Godzilla, which I like both movies, but I think the 2014 movie's better. But I think there's a good amount of Godzilla like action within this one, especially in the latter half. But I can understand like it is too long. I don't think it need to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. If they could have like cut off 20 minutes, I think it would have been a lot more streamlined and good. But eh.
Yeah, but did there's other versions have P. Diddy on the soundtrack? I think not.
I don't think so.
Okay, so after this title, I'm going to be talking a lot of horror because we are in October, spooky month. We did do our Oops All Horror edition just to plug more of our content, but yeah. So I had not heard of this movie, but the director made me really interested in checking this out, and that is John Frankenheimer's The Challenge. And you have a very swole what was that? Yeah, Scott Glenn. I almost got that mixed up, yeah. Which you will remember him from Silence of the Lambs, where he was not swole. So range. It's called having a really great range. So go. And we do have interior art this time. So here is this one. I don't love it, but it's bringing a lot of energy, and yeah, we vibe with that. So go. So this was an interesting one because it is like a bigger budget sort of like take on maybe like a lower budget like Chuck Norris film, and I think it's pretty fun. It's one of those movies that's like it's perfectly serviceable. Like the action is really well done. It's extremely well directed. Jerry Goldsmith does the score, and that's also really on point. Scott Glenn starts out like a little bit of like a slobbish kind of guy, but he takes on this mantle of helping this family recover this sword. Like the whole thing is like, we got to get this sword back. Not that this is like the only like sword based samurai movie, of course, but there was elements of it that sort of made me feel a little like Tarantino sort of maybe was a fan of this film, which isn't a stretch because he does like these. I mean, it's big budget, but it does feel kind of grim and gritty. It has that 42nd Street kind of feeling on a bigger budget. And I think for the most part, the characters are really compelling. The story is maybe not that well developed, but there was kind of enough fun twists and turns that I was engaged. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely better movies in this genre, of course. Like, I don't think that they set out to make anything that was groundbreaking. It was just, it's a fun popcorn film. And as far as how it looks, overall, pretty nice. I know there is a little bit of like artifacts and a little bit of like scratches and stuff, but it's really not that distracting. Like if I wasn't actively looking for stuff like that, I probably wouldn't have noticed. So overall, it's a nice transfer too. I don't believe it's a new 2 or 4K scan, but whatever they were working with was already pretty nice to begin with. We have a really great commentary track by Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson. They've done commentary tracks together before. They have a really great chemistry together. So it is really fun. Oftentimes, both you and I have to watch some of these movies multiple times with commentary tracks. And that can be a little bit daunting. But, when you have a fun track, it does make it feel a little bit more fun to kind of revisit the movie and then they give you a lot of great information and context to help you maybe appreciate it a little bit more, which I think is what a good commentary track should do. So this is a really nice release, and it's just a fun movie. It's like kind of, again, gritty, grimy, kind of gory. It's a good time, and you can see Scott Glenn swole.
Ooh. Well, I'll be completely honest. I kind of wrote this movie off whenever I was judging a book by its cover, because I've kind of gotten into this mindset recently where I just got a little bit burnt out on kind of like the bad, like canon films, like kind of like action schlock, and that's not very good, but it's like so bad it's good. But I've kind of just gotten a little bit burnt out on that. But I did not pay attention that this was directed by John Frankenheimer, so now I have to watch it, and I'm like, damn it, he got me. So I'm glad you covered this one for me, especially, just so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll check it out, because it just looked kind of like that dumb action movie. I didn't really, but Frankenheimer just seems like the type of person who would like elevate it a little bit, and just knowing that there's a little bit more care put into this, I'll check it out. But I had just completely been like, I can't do this right now. So I'm glad you covered it. My next title is from a label that I really love. They're always like bringing things that I were not on my radar at all. And so this is another example. This is from Deaf Crocodile. This is Cat City. It's another animated feature from Hungary. I love whenever they kind of dig up these kind of gems that they're just wild movies, but they're a lot of fun. So here's the disc artwork, and let me see if you can see the artwork underneath. It's not double-sided, but you can kind of see, like, I'll just kind of pull it out a little bit here. No glare. But it's a pretty simple tale. It's kind of like, has elements of kind of like a Godfather or something like that. There's like a cabal of kitties that run the town, and so this one has like a metal arm. He's the boss of like these group of kitties, but he also has like a bigger boss that he's kind of afraid of. This has a booklet with different like essays and stuff, which is really cool. And they're warring with the mice, and there's like this mice resistance who like all the cats have their areas bugged and stuff, but they're trying to put up a resistance against the cats. And so there's like this one kind of like lone gunman type mouse who comes into town and tries to like get things like enact a plan in order to take the kitties down. And that's basically the premise. It's just cats versus mice, but like in a heightened aesthetic that kind of has almost like a Ralph Bakshi type animation style. But it's really, really interesting, like beautiful animation. I love it a lot. And the humor, it's not like R-rated like Ralph Bakshi, like Fritz the Cat or anything, which I've talked about in the past, but it is adult oriented. I would say I don't think it's rated, but I would guess it would be like a PG-13 in like our terms. And because there's like a little bit of violence, nothing too like grotesque or anything, but like a little bit of like innuendo and all that stuff. So if you like kind of more adult skewing animation without being like too hardcore, Cat City is a lot of fun. There's a lot of really good clever humor. Just a really, like, for animation fans, definitely recommended. This release is highly recommended also because it's a restoration of the 35 millimeter camera negative. It looks really great. All the natural like lines and like cell anime or like the original animation, all like it's been cleaned up, but you can tell it's like natural film grain. It's all preserved very well. Nice, robust colors, deep black levels, no digital artifacts or anything like that. Just a really well-rounded presentation. It has the original, I believe, mono 2.0 soundtrack, as well as I believe there's a 5.1 track included as well. So you can choose which one you want. And that's in the original Hungarian with English subtitles. I believe these are from what I remember, these are traditional English subtitles, which their last release that I covered, they were English SDH subtitles for one of their live action outputs, which I wasn't a big fan of because it had all the descriptive stuff like like door creaks and stuff like that. That's not the way of this one. You have just traditional English subtitles, which I really appreciated. So this also has a commentary track. I believe it's from Sam Deegan, who I really love her stuff. Yeah, Sam Deegan does this one. There's also an interview with one of the heads of the Film Institute from Hungary. There's a new director interview as well that runs about 23 minutes. There's a video essay. There's 3 additional animated shorts from the director as well included that have also been restored. So pretty packed release, really fun like find for animation fans. If you want a cool slipcover, I believe they still have them available through Vinegar Syndrome. This is through their partnership through OCN distribution. So if you want a slipcover, go to Vinegar Syndrome or select independent retailers. I believe like Diabolic usually has some slipcovers from them too. But yeah, Cat City, a lot of fun for especially for animation fans. Definitely check it out. It's a really good find.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I do really love that like Ralph Bakshi kind of like adult animation. I know he didn't make it, but you said that that kind of gave you that vibe. I love that label. Like you said, they always put out some really interesting stuff. I've now entered the horror era of, I'm going to be talking about a bunch of 4K horror titles, which is really exciting. My first one is 1983's Cujo, which I have to say, well, hold on. First, let me just go to the back here. We do, I believe this ports over everything from the previous releases. And this, I believe the roundtable discussion maybe is new as far as like to this release, but pop this open. No reversible art. Here's the discs. Yeah, so I'm a big softie when it comes to dogs and animals. Like I'm a definitely like an animal person. I have a dog. Poor thing has kennel cough, which sucks. But I think this is such a sad movie because like the dog really is the villain, but he's really also kind of the victim as well. And it's kind of interesting because I hadn't seen this in a while, but my recollection was it was like I found it very boring for like the front half of the film. And I kind of wondered if it was just because I was younger and I was like, just give me all the action, all the horror, like none of that like stupid stuff like story and subtext and blah blah blah. So I watched it over again and I do appreciate like fleshing out these characters, but it's it is very boring at the beginning. And I was trying to think about like why exactly the first little bit of the movie feels like you're not watching a horror movie. It feels like you're watching this sort of, marital drama with this like wife played by Dee Wallace that has his young son, and like she's cheating on her husband with this guy, which was her real life husband, the guy that she was cheating on. So I thought that was cute. He's all they're also both in The Howling, which they also is about marital problems and cheating. So it's kind of weird. For people not familiar, this is sort of like takes place in the Castle Rock universe with Stephen King. So you have like other like things that sort of connect into the same universe. And there's a really interesting scene. I mentioned that because there's a really interesting scene at the beginning, which, when I was younger, I didn't really pick up on, but, I've since like read and watched a lot of more Stephen King stuff. So the kid says like, oh, I saw this like creature in my closet. He had bright eyes and a big mouth. And like, I was like, holy shit, he's talking about like Pennywise. Those are the deadlights. And then so I thought, okay, maybe that's a stretch. But then beside his bed is a clown with balloons. And I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. I mean, no, stuff like that's kind of cool. But like, I think certainly the movie really ramps up in its second and third act. And that's where I think the movie really shines. Like, it is so like tense, and like the jump scares are really well paced and earned. I think it's a little bit disjointed. It almost feels like there's probably a lot of stuff we're missing contextually in the book that, maybe had to be sort of streamlined for the movie. So maybe all this stuff that was front loaded maybe pays off a little bit more, maybe when you're reading the book. I don't know. It's kind of weird as an adaptation. I think like you really have that amazing sort of final act that I think is kind of what cements this movie as like a horror classic. It looks really nice. I know I have owned this previously, so I was able to take the time to sort of compare. I was like working with like an old DVD though, so obviously night and day. But yeah, the transfer is beautiful. Like there's a lot of scenes outdoors. What's kind of cool is this takes place largely in the daytime. So all you have, like when you have like scenery, you have that like beautiful lush looking like countryside, and like everything looks really dynamic and rich. Skin tones look well balanced. So really nice. Sounds really good as well. I think it's a great overall presentation. If you are a fan of this film, yeah, this has a lot of really great features. As I said, it's got a whopping like 3 commentary tracks, so that's kind of fun. There's like 2 different ones with the director, which I think's kind of interesting. I guess it's for different releases. One's from 2007, and the other one is from 2013. And then I believe there is a brand new one with moderated by Lee Gambit, who wrote a book about Cujo, which is also really interesting. So, yeah, it's a nice presentation. The movie is a little hit or miss for me, but you could have a doggone good time with this one.
I'll give you a little clap for that. Good job. I have never seen Cujo, but I'm very interested to watch it. I'll give just the tiniest plug to the aforementioned solo episode that I did last week on my own, because I talked about a movie called The Pack, which also involves killer dogs. And I really liked that one. It was very surprising, and it's directed from the director of Enter the Dragon, and it's very well done. And you got Joe Don Baker and everything. But I really liked that one, and there were multiple killer dogs in that one. It was also very sad because they were like neglected dogs that had turned bad. So I'm interested to see how Cujo compares, because as far as I know, there's only one killer dog. So like one killer dog versus multiple killer dogs, I don't know how it's going to stack up. But it is Stephen King writing it, and maybe I will actually like the character work at the beginning. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm glad that it got a good release for me to dive into for my first viewing.
Yeah, and I will just also to just add, I normally think like kids in scary movies are kind of annoying, but I will say that the kid in this does a really fantastic job. Dee Wallace is of course really great. I met her at a convention once, and she wasn't super the nicest, but maybe it caught her on a bad day. But Cujo, it's good.
I don't know, like Dee Wallace, Tom Savini, all these people you say aren't the nicest. Beverly D'Angelo, maybe it's not them. Maybe just look in the mirror.
Ow.
Maybe stop spreading all this misinformation about these stars. I'm just playing with you. My first modern title, it's a one from Yellow Veil Pictures. This was in theaters a couple months ago. I was very excited to check it out. This is Ashkal, the Tunisian investigation. So this is also another release in conjunction with OCN Distribution and Vinegar Syndrome. So here's the disc art, and then there's a booklet here. Which is, I highly recommend checking out the booklet, because I feel this is a release or a movie that is definitely helpful to have some context to what is going on. I enjoyed it whenever I first watched it, but I did read up on like some political stuff that helped me kind of put some stuff into context that's happened like within the area as well. And it made me anxious to revisit this even again. before I write my review. But what this is it takes place in Tunisia. It is kind of starts off with a very brief discussion about this man who I believe is in like 2010 or 2011. This is a real life person who performed immolation, which is like burning yourself alive for like a cause to raise awareness, like as a protest. And it kind of like shook up the whole country, and kind of told a little bit about him. But then it kind of like also tells about this area of the city where they were developing this complex, like this housing complex for like more like higher class like dignitaries and stuff. But it kind of fell on hard times and ran out of money, and it's kind of like been a project that's been like going off and on for several years. And this kind of goes to the themes of the movie, where it's like the country reckoning with the ways of the past, like the old ways, and conflict with the new ways. So there's like class struggles and like struggles of like identity, and just all kinds of internal governmental struggles within this country, which all culminates in this fictionalized telling of these police who start investigating this basically series of people immolating, setting themselves on fire, and wondering if they're doing this because there's no signs of struggle, which are typically associated with this. Like people like thrash around just because you're set on fire, and there'll be some kind of signs of that. Or are they doing this, or is there someone kind of going around killing people this way by setting people on fire? And it's a very interesting, very deliberately paced movie. I think this is one that less patient audience members might have a little bit of a hard time with, because I think the point is that it's very cyclical. It's very deliberate in how it kind of shows. It's a lot of these same events are happening again and again, where these police members, like there's a younger woman cop and then like an older guy who's kind of like part of the old establishment, and you kind of see their dynamic at play of like what each of them believe is right for the country. And a lot of the same events repeat throughout, of just like finding people who are like getting set on fire. And it kind of lingers on this in a very specific way, where you just kind of, it makes you feel helpless, and it makes you kind of like question things in like a really interesting way. I wouldn't say it's quite Lynchian, because it's not quite as weird as that, but it's very mysteriously paced, I would say. And like just like there are lingering shots that make you just feel uneasy. And the way the cinematography captures certain shots, like you'll just be like following like a tracking shot of a character walking through these ruins of buildings, and you just start to feel so uncomfortable, because it is ostensibly a thriller slash almost pseudo horror movie, but it's like an investigative thriller, that you just feel like something is right around the corner, but just like you're just waiting and you're not quite sure if something's going to happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but that just kind of puts you on edge. And thematically, I think there's a lot to this movie, and I think there's still a lot left for me to discover. I'm not going to say I completely understand everything about this movie, but it's a very interesting movie, especially if you like police thrillers, but like with a supernatural tinge, because there's definitely some like weird kind of supernatural stuff going on that you can't quite explain. So if that appeals to you, definitely make sure to check this out. And this Blu-ray is really good, because it's, like I said, brand new film. Looks very nice. It's very rich, detailed transfer. It comes in the original language and DTS 5.1, and also a 2.0 option. There is not too much in the way of special features, but there's a few things. There's a 31-minute Q&A that happened in New York at the Film at Lincoln Center, which also kind of gives you additional context in addition to the booklet that's included. There's an alternate ending, which it's about 11 minutes, but about 9.5 of those minutes is the exact same as the original ending. And there's like just like an additional extension, which I'm glad they didn't really include in the theatrical ending, because I think the way it is ending now is pretty powerful. And then there is a 6-minute like location scouting featurette, which is just kind of wordless, and you're just like looking at some of the locations. But overall, really pretty nice release, like special features wise, audiovisual wise. The movie's intriguing, and just like the Cat City, if you want a slipcover, go to OCN Distribution / Vinegar Syndrome, get you a slipcover that will be very nice. But there's also the standard edition, which I also really like. So yeah, if anything I said intrigues you, definitely check it out. It's a kind of an under the radar sleeper, but I think it's worth discovering if you're looking to engage with something pretty thematically interesting.
Yeah, that's another title, kind of like your last one, that was completely not on my radar, but sounds really intriguing. And yeah, like I'm adding it to my ever-growing pile of things I need now.
Mm-hmm.
Damn you.
Well, you did it with me for the challenge, so we're even.
Okay. So my next one was, I was actually really, really excited for this because I had not seen this in probably, gosh, over a decade or more. And that is the adaptation of Red Dragon on 4K and Blu-ray. Back. And there's nothing really that exciting going on in the inside. Um, so have you seen this, or have you seen it, but it's been a while?
I have not seen it. I think I own the original DVD, but like I hadn't seen Hannibal, so I was like, I can't go straight to Red Dragon, but now's the time. Now is the time to pull that trigger.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm glad you mentioned Man or Red Dragon being like sort of attached to Hannibal. And it is really interesting because I think like having recently rewatched that for yeah, that 4K. I didn't cover it, but Kino put that out and I had to get it. It was interesting kind of rewatching that with like the original Silence of the Lambs sort of all around the same time. And I'm also a big fan of Michael Mann's Manhunter, which is really cool. I got to meet Tom Noonan. He was creepy. Like I'll try to find the photo, but like we took a photo together, and he like walked to the back of me and like took a picture of him like sort of looming over me. So that was fun and not terrifying at all. But I have a great signed photo of him in that movie. But anyways, as much as I love that movie, I have to say I think Red Dragon is the better adaptation. I think it's a better adaptation, although I think it also, I'm probably one of the few people that say I find Thomas Harris's work kind of clunky, and I feel like the adaptations of his work are far better than the actual source material. And that's my, big hot take for this episode, but I feel like this kind of improves a lot of some of the things that maybe Mann's version was missing, and even some of like Harris's more nuanced fleshing out of characters kind of fits a little bit better. I think the character of Dollarhide is more realized than Manhunter and even the book. Like we do get a little bit more of like his childhood and kind of what drives him, but it's done in a way that feels kind of organic to the story, and it doesn't it's just glimpses into his childhood. It's not like there's just whole class scenes. There's like sequences that just sort of get you almost caught up without it being too like strenuous. So I also think the acting is great. I think Hopkins in particular really taps to Hannibal Lecter. Like his Hannibal is so seamless from this to Silence of the Lambs, which this bridges that gap. Like you can watch this and watch Silence of the Lambs. Like the ending of this sort of picks up right where Silence of the Lambs kind of starts, more or less. And as much as I love Hannibal, the movie, it's just a slightly different version of Hannibal, where I feel like this is very much that like suave but sinister, but still like slightly unhinged. But you would love to have him at your dinner party, even though he'll be serving you human meat. He'll still charm the pants off you though. So I love that. I kind of go back and forth about whether I like Edward Norton in this. There's deliveries where I think, oh, that's pretty good, and then there's times when I'm like, that's maybe not as good. And I don't love his like bleached blonde hair. It's just really weird. The overall movie is really good though. It has like a lot of good tension. The psychological aspects are really there. Ray Fiennes plays a fantastic Dollarhide. He's so fucking weird and creepy. Harvey Keitel is always great. We have the late Philip Seymour Hoffman in a small but really deeply disturbing scene. It's so goddamn creepy. But anyways, yeah, so this is really good. As far as how it looks, I think it overall looks really nice. I will say that I don't know if this is of how of like how it was like filmed, but there's like really weird like some of the faces look oversaturated, which is a little distracting. And again, you might be able to just chalk that up to actually how it was filmed, not necessarily like Kino's fault as far as like transfer goes. Special features wise, this does port over everything from the previous edition. I will say, if you want to just absolutely mess your mind up, there is a behind the scenes um, of like Michael Jackson on set. For some reason, I'm not sure if they explained, but it's kind of better that they don't because it's makes it even more weird. But going even further than that, there is a scene. It's a really dramatic scene too between Ray Fiennes and Emily Watson, who like they're having this dramatic scene, and he's like, "Oh, my mother's upstairs," or like something's upstairs or whatever, and instead of like saying that, he's like, Michael Jackson's upstairs. And it's like really weird because like it's this sort of funny take because Michael Jackson's on set. So it's like just levels are really bizarre, but it's like fun. And you just it's kind of like you need to see it to believe it. But I really like it. I think it's really great. Again, I think Anthony Hopkins, obviously he knows his character, he nails it. This is a really good release, and I kind of hope we get some more Hannibal movies. Like I'm hoping that we get maybe Manhunter. Scream Factory might own the rights to that still, but Hannibal Rising would be kind of cool to sort of like further complete this 4K set that they have. But yeah, really good. I'm like, once you see it, I feel like we got to talk about it because it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely get caught up with everything and just really have a really delicious time. I'll just devour it. So it'll be great. My next title, I think you might recognize this title because it was last year we had an odyssey trying to get you a link, like a proper working link to review this. This is from Paramount, and this is Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon.
I'm triggered.
There were weeks where I was like, "Did you get it?" And you're like, "Nope," and I was just like, "Jesus Christ!" So that never ended up happening, but now I'm here on this podcast.
Was it worth
video?
Was it worth all the?
No, not really. Was it bad? No, but it was just kind of underwhelming compared to what I thought it would be. This is from director Anna Lily Amirpour, who did a Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So I was very interested in this. It has a pretty good cast. It has Craig Robinson, who people might know best from The Office, but he's been in a lot of great stuff. But it also has Kate Hudson, which I was interested to see how she would do in kind of like this more genre-y fare, even though, of course, she did the classic Skeleton Key, but I didn't know how she would fare in this. But overall, it's decent. It wasn't as scary as I thought it'd be. I was hoping it would be like a legit horror movie. It's more kind of like a supernatural, almost like crime drama almost. But it's about a young woman who starts out named Mona Lisa, who starts out in kind of like an institution where she's being mistreated. She ends up escaping from this institution, and she kind of has some psychic powers, and she's almost like a feral like woman who's like, she kind of knows how to act in the real world, but she's just kind of like been so abused that she's just kind of like everything's a little bit off. And so she doesn't have any money or anything, so she's just going through New Orleans just trying to exist and live. And like she goes into convenience stores and like without any money, and kind of gets into some like shenanigans there. And you see like the best in people and the worst in people. Like some people want to help her and some people want to take advantage of her. And then she ends up coming across the path of Kate Hudson's character, who she plays a stripper who they meet in like the parking lot of like a diner. And they strike up a friendship. She lets Mona Lisa stay at her place, but then she kind of realizes what she can do with her abilities, and they start uh, doing it as like a money making venture, like jacking people at ATMs, like convincing them like they want to give their money away, like at ATMs, and also convincing other people to just give them money. And Craig Robinson plays a cop who has an early run in with Mona Lisa, and then from there is like kind of trying to track her down and like figure out what exactly is going on. So there's all these different elements going on, and it's fairly entertaining, but it just kind of seems to not really build to much. There's a very cathartic finale, which I really appreciated, but the journey to get there is just kind of like it's really, I know this is just kind of cliche to say these days, but it's kind of vibes, and but it's not really adding up to much because Mona Lisa is such like a quiet, insular character, and the characters around her aren't always the most interesting. Kate Hudson does a fine job, but I didn't find her particularly like compelling. She's just kind of like a woman who is using her Mona Lisa, but also kind of cares about her, but more so cares about herself. And I don't know. I just narratively, I just was kind of like, it's not a very long movie. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, I believe. But even at the hour and 47, so yeah, it could have been an hour and a half and been a lot more compact and tight and like really like help the pacing a little bit. I wish I could say it was better. I don't think it's a grand loss that you never got this link, but I'm glad I watched it. It's well shot and everything. It just narratively, it just kind of left me a little bit underwhelmed. But this Blu-ray, it's fine. There's no special features. The audio visual is where it shines. Good video quality, strong audio, DTS 5.1, but as bare bones as you can get. This is a press disc. This isn't like a manufactured on-demand disc. So Paramount, they gave it a Blu-ray release. So if you're a fan of the director or Kate Hudson or just kind of offbeat supernatural dramas, maybe try before you buy, but it's a good release if you do happen to like it.
Nice. Yeah. No, it was funny because I had to laugh when I saw that on the sheet for this week. So
Yeah.
I was very curious what you thought of that. So this is not my final title, don't worry. But this is my final horror title. And this one is a little controversial as far as the transfer, but we'll get into that. We have Rosemary's Baby for the first time in 4K, at least in the US. And I love this cover. Like I kind of want a little poster of this. Like this is really cool. So
there are so many people online who hate that poster so much. There's like such
really?
divisive reaction to it. Yes.
I don't know what
some people love it, some people hate it. It's insane. There's like probably like 40 pages on Blu-ray.com of people arguing about the cover.
I don't know. I think, but anyways, there's the discs. This does have a digital code that's not in there. But if you order it, you will have one. So I'm not gonna like go on and on about this movie. It is a classic. If you haven't seen it, like, what are you doing with your life? You need to check it out. It's really good. It's one of those. It sucks that it's made by such a shitty person. And again, I'm not gonna get on a soapbox about separating the art from the artist, but yeah, it is one of those movies that it really builds to one of the scariest endings. Like that ending still gives me the creeps. Like it still just makes the hair on my arm stand up. Like it's just so terrifying, and Mia Farrow just sells the shit out of like every sort of horrific moment. Like it's one of these really interesting, this uh along with like Stepford Wives was kind of the 1-2 punch about deconstructing feminism and like how it's kind of horrific just being a woman and giving birth and doing these, things that's supposed to be so natural and beautiful, but also can be just very horrific. And I think it's like an interesting kind of metaphor for a lot of like stuff that's currently going on with women's reproductive rights. I again won't get in the soapbox, but yeah, it's fantastic. Ruth Gordon is amazingly creepy. I believe she won an Oscar for that role, and like well deserved. Everything just works. The pacing, the how it's photographed, the use of the Dakota is just haunting and beautiful. You can't really, unless you actually live there, you can't really see inside the Dakota, but like I've been by that building many times and it is super fucking creepy. um, so watching this new restoration, I was very kind of disappointed. So you talked about the black phone kind of being darker, and this is also kind of noticeably darker than like the say Blu-ray release. And I don't know. I mean, it's not that this is supposed to be necessarily like a bright, beautiful, sunshiny movie, but like it does sort of lose some of that, I don't know, life in its production design and costumes when everything feels slightly more darker and muted. I mean, everything, of course, looks clear and beautiful, and there's no like dirt or artifacts or anything like that. It's just, yeah, it's very borderline distracting, even. So just keep that in mind. I think the Blu-ray edition's much nicer as far as how it looks. The decision to sort of darken this up is interesting. Like, I don't know who the photographer, the cinematographer was on this, but I can't imagine this was the preferred sort of way it's supposed to look. And we're not hopefully consulting with Polanski. So I don't know where the decision was to make this sort of look a little bit different like that, but I don't know. It's one of those few times when I'm like, I'm really was disappointed because I was really excited to have this on 4K. Like it's just kind of like with The Exorcist in 4K. It wasn't perfect, but at least it was noticeably better and different looking as far as like course correcting some of the not so great previous restorations. So keep that in mind. I mean, you might just kind of want to stick with the Blu-ray of this for now, unless they do maybe like a new 4K restoration in the future, which I don't know if that's very realistic, but yeah, wasn't completely digging it, and I was kind of surprised because Paramount usually does a really nice job, like as like similar to Warner Brothers and some of the other studios we talk about. They really do put a lot of care into their prestige films. And I don't know, we don't even get like a scrap of new extras. It's very kind of meh. So great movie. I will say that I'm gonna be a little harsh on this restoration overall release. I think it could be better.
Yeah, I have the Criterion Blu-ray, which I have seen this movie before, but I'm looking forward to checking out again, see how I feel about the 4K transfer. But I am disappointed that maybe it's not like a 5-star effort. So we'll see how it goes. My next title, I have two documentaries, and if I was smart, I would transition into the one I'm planning for my last one, but I'm not smart because it deals with something you just said, but that's a tease for later. My actual next title is from ETR Media, and it's one I was really intrigued by when this was announced. This is Pretending I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater story. So it's about the video game franchise Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Here's the booklet and disc art, which kind of is similar to the game menu for those who remember. Let me just show off this booklet, which has like a brief thing from the director up front, and then some like concept art and like photos and everything. And This does have a double-sided artwork. So the other artwork is here. But I do like the trying to make it look like a video game on the front. That's pretty fun. So yeah, this is a pretty breezy, not completely successful, but like kind of, it's a nostalgic look back at this game. It's about 75 minutes long. And what I like about this is it does kind of just bring back a lot of those good memories. Once again, I told you earlier, I'm not a big like sports person, but I did play my fair share of video games in the past, and I did own at least one version of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Mine might have been 3 or 4. It's been a while since I've seen it or played it. But this was a franchise that wasn't unfamiliar to me. So I did kind of get some of those thrills of just like remembering playing these games and hearing a lot of the people like involved with it talk about it. So you had like Tony Hawk and a lot of the other skaters that are like were involved in this series. You had some people from the video game company that was making it, but I wish there would have been more. I believe that Neversoft is the company that put this out. So there's like 1 or 2 representatives, but where I feel this kind of falls back a little bit as a documentary is that there wasn't a lot of actual exploration of the game itself in depth, like how the series continued among after the first couple like successful franchises and like any setbacks that happened throughout. This is more so, it's almost bordering on a puff piece where everyone's just like, oh, this was such a great like game, and like I really like what this did for the skateboarding like culture in America, because a lot of this is just subjects talking about how the game helped bring skateboarding culture to a larger audience in America and made people more interested and personally benefited their lives and how it benefited the sport. And while that's all well and good, and you also get a good amount of time dedicated to the rise of skateboarding, which I actually saw in the other Tony Hawk like as a person documentary from last year that I believe is on Max, which is a really great documentary. But I didn't need so much like the history of skateboarding in this one. I wanted more of the actual like game like mechanics and background and stuff, which there is some of that. I just wish there would have been a little bit more. But as kind of like a breezy, fun watch, it works. It just isn't reaching the level that I want for like a really great documentary. It's more so just kind of like oh, that was fun, and you keep going about your business. But if you do have a deep attachment to this franchise, like this video game franchise, I think you'll really love it. It's a lot of fun. I just want a little bit more substance. But this Blu-ray release is really cool. It looks really nice, sounds good. It has an audio commentary track with the director, so you get a lot of good background detail on his place within this world. There's a 6-minute featurette at one of the film festivals that they played at. There's another 36-minute interview with one of the Neversoft developers, which that he actually like his uninterrupted interview, which is not included in the movie, gives a lot of that background that I did want from the movie. So I'm really glad that they included that at least, even though I still even want even more than this. And there's also a couple of extended like 20 to 30-minute videos of just some of the like Tony Hawk and I believe Rodney Mullins doing like a series of tricks that are being captured for motion capture. So you just get to see kind of this raw footage of them back in the day, just like doing a lot of tricks to capture for the video game, which is pretty cool. And I believe that's pretty much it. But overall, if you're a fan of the video game series, Pretending I'm a Superman, it's pretty fun. But if you're more of a casual fan, maybe see if you can seek this out and try before you buy. But if you do like it, it's a really good release. And as with the other Vinegar Syndrome / OCN distribution titles, if you want a slipcover, if they're still available, you can go to Vinegar Syndrome or select indie retailers and get a cool slipcover, or you just get the standard version and it'll look like this.
Nice. Yeah, that is one that's like, and there are certain releases that I'm like, that's thoroughly not for me. But that sounds interesting if you are interested in that. I know, as an aside, Vinegar did put out something kind of similar with the GoldenEye game,
Oh yeah,
like
which
documentary.
is somewhere around here. Yeah.
How was that? Like, I
I have not watched it yet because I didn't have to review it, so it kind of fell on the back burner. But I'm very much looking forward to getting to that after spooky season ends up.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm ending with a not horror movie, but it might, well, depending on your feelings, it might be a horror movie. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. And that is the Barbie movie. Um, First of all, so here's the back. I'm getting very excited and ahead of myself, but um, I don't know if you can pick this up, but this is usually silver and it's pink. I love that like so much. Um, this is just the inside disc. This does have a digital code that is not in there, but if you order it, you will have one. But again, yeah, I just love how even the logo's pink. It's great. So I'm gonna just do like a really quick review of this because I feel like it's made over $1 billion. Everyone's seen it or at least heard of it. Um, I got to see this. I saw this twice now, once in the theater and then revisiting this 4K. And it's a really fun movie. It's one of those movies that like I think a lot of people weren't expecting it to be very good. Like it was just going to be like a cash in, but it's so much deeper and weirder than I think a lot of people kind of expected. Like one of the things I initially thought about when I left the theater, and plus it was like a lot of fun because it was just like a group of like 40-year-olds, 40-year-old men at the theater. Um, but it really does have that sort of like very weird, like it's a little bit more like existential and like um it definitely has a lot more going on. Do I think all of the jokes and humor land? Not really. I mean, like as much as I love Will Ferrell, I feel like his character kind of was obnoxious and maybe really didn't add much to the story other than just sort of being a mouthpiece for some of the, you know, thematic stuff. But Ryan Gosling, just so amazing. Margot Robbie, of course. And so I just got back from New York Comic Con, so there was a ton of Barbies. There was a ton of Kens. There was not a lot of Allens, but there was some really the the Allens that we did get at Comic Con were like, were great. Um, but it's a lot of fun. It's very silly and campy, but it does have a lot of heart, and I did like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do love how Rhea Perlman plays the sort of ghost of the creator of Barbie. I was surprised they did not shy away from the fact that like she had a lot of like tax problems. And I was like, okay, that's kind of bold for, you know, like being put out there, but it's a lot of fun. It's just one of those movies that like I feel bad for people that are so hyper masculine that they can't like sit down and just try this movie and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that mindset, I completely don't understand. But as far as how it looks, I mean, it's not a shocker that it looks spectacular. I mean, this was a movie that's kind of made for 4K. It's bright, it's beautiful. You really do get to see those like small little details in like every inch of the production design and the costumes and just everything. It's really stunning. Like it's kind of breathtaking. Like it's cool when you see it in the theater, but like when you're a little more like closer up and um seeing more details and stuff, it's really fantastic. Sounds really great as well. We do get some featurettes, not really hugely exciting. I was kind of hoping for maybe like a commentary track or something like that, but yeah, I'm happy with this. I'm actually happy that we, you know, got 4K instead of like waiting. Like I know Universal sometimes has been doing this Blu-ray and then 4K. Like just give me the 4K. Like But yeah, this is really great. I'm glad that we got a really fun release. Um, so if you haven't seen it and you feel like you're just too butch, just shut the fuck up and watch it. It's fun.
I cannot tell you like how long I've been waiting to watch this movie. I know like my wife especially, like she's been anticipating this movie for years. We're both huge Greta Gerwig fans. And we like fuck the pandemic because we did like we even considered renting out a theater so we just the two of us could go see it, but we ended up
Aw.
not doing that. But the day that this came in, we were just like, all right, let's do this. Let's put it on. We like turned like I put my phone to like airplane mode. I was like, we are not getting distracted and everything. And it was glorious. And even after we watched it, I was like, okay, like I'm like, I know you can't wait to delve into the special features. So I guess I guess you'll be doing that soon. You're like, and she was like, can we do that now? And I was like, right after the movie, I was like, all right. So I just like wrote my review as we were watching it, like on the couch right after we watched the movie. I was like, all right, we're just watching all these featurettes and stuff. So watched all of those in full, but like so glad to finally have Barbie on 4K. And it did not disappoint. I had my expectations up pretty high. And while there were certain elements where I agree the Will Ferrell character was the weak link, I think. But overall, I love the movie so much. So I highly recommend it. Like you said, don't shy away from Barbie just because it's a Barbie movie. It's a lot of fun. Finally, my final title. This was, like as I mentioned, kind of connected to something you're talking about in Rosemary's Baby. This is um, The Lost Weekend, a love story from Universal, and it's a documentary about John Lennon, but it's mostly a documentary about May Pang, who John Lennon had a lost weekend, which was about 18 months. He kind of It's the story of him going off to California with this girl who was his assistant at first, and leaving Yoko Ono in New York, and just for while they separated, and kind of allowing May Pang to narrate this and tell her own story in her own words, because a lot has been discussed about her over these many decades about like who she was, what she was actually doing with John during this time, and all this stuff. So she's kind of here to tell her own story. And while yes, there is maybe slight bias here and there because it is her point of view. I think it's a very really welcome point of view, especially for any Beatles fanatics. Which once again, my wife is a huge Beatles fanatic, so we are very excited to check this one out, and we've had a lot of good discussions about this afterwards. But this it's really cool because, like I said, it's May Pang telling her story from like her first starting to work for John and Yoko, and Yoko, like them kind of getting into like a rocky patch, and then Yoko kind of like in a really fucked up way asking her to basically have an affair with her husband because she knew that John was kind of getting restless, and she thought that if she could control who he was with, that it would like not be so bad. And Yoko had a lot of weird like I'm not like everyone else who like blames her for breaking up the Beatles, but I do think she had a lot of like tendencies that were very harmful for John, and John is no saint either, and there's a lot of things that they reveal about John in this about him being abusive and stuff that like they don't really gloss over a lot of that. There are things that whenever May is talking about her time with John where but I think both Jessica, my wife, and we both were kind of like, oh, that's kind of like almost there. You can see some of that lingering trauma that maybe she hasn't processed. Overall, it's a very interesting documentary because it just shows this time in California, how it was very fraught sometimes, how it was very creatively fruitful, how John flourished a lot whenever he was away from Yoko's influence, and how maybe if he hadn't got assassinated, he wouldn't have like who knows what would have happened with this relationship. That even though at this point he was back with Yoko, he was still in contact with May. And there's just a lot of these details that I find very fascinating. Well, what really helps sell the documentary with me, most of it is archival footage. Most it's like interviews, still photos, and some like original animation to like connect some stuff together with May Pang's narration. But there is one person who appears on camera and does like a talking head interview, and that is Julian Lennon, which is John Lennon's son, who he was kind of had also kind of a rocky relationship at first until May kind of helped mend that relationship and kind of like realize make John realize that he needed to be like an actual father to his son and repair that relationship and not let him get in his own head and everything. So you can kind of see that the respect that Julian has for May, and like his mom, which is Cynthia Lennon, like she had a really great relationship, like friendship with May Pang after John died as well. So you can tell there's not like a lot of like bad blood on this side. With Yoko, the way she's portrayed, I'm sure Yoko hates this documentary, but to allow May to tell her story, I think it was very worthwhile. And there were times there structurally where I had issues with this documentary. With it kind of sometimes felt like a glorified, like almost like VH1 documentary, but and like it kind of zipped through certain things too quickly because it's just like, okay, yeah, like this happened, and like and then like 30 seconds on this, and then this happened. So it kind of like they really sped through stuff. It's like a 90 something minute documentary. I wouldn't have balked at it being 2 hours and had like a little bit more time spent on certain events, but I think it's a pretty good documentary that Beatles fans will especially like. If you're not super familiar with the Beatles lore, it might not be for you necessarily, but it's still an interesting story. But for Beatles fanatics especially, I think you'll love this. And it's even some stuff that, like, I knew a lot about John Lennon. There are still things that I had not seen before in this documentary, which I think is pretty cool. So this doesn't have any special features, unfortunately. I would have loved to see like some extra footage that wasn't included, but no special features. But audiovisual wise, perfectly good. Like I said, archival material. So some of it isn't in the best shape, but for what it is, everything looks as good as it can and sounds as good as it can. So Beatles fans, tune in. Everyone else, there's better Beatles documentaries that are more comprehensive, but this one's for the real ones, I guess.
Nice. That's really interesting. My sister, this was like years ago. She took a flight for like a work thing, and Sean Lennon was on that flight. It's kind of wild.
Yeah,
just
that's Yoko's son.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that sounds interesting. I'm like, it's probably another one that's maybe not necessarily for me, but like as you were saying, like as far as like supplemental material for like hardcore fans, that sounds like right up their alley. So that's awesome. And with that, that is our episode. As always, we love hearing from you. So leaving a comment is not only really awesome, and we do read and appreciate those, but that helps kind of like feed the algorithm and get our video out to more people. So same with likes, and please subscribe. We do this every week. Plus we have a lot of other really great content. As I said, I was at Comic-Con, so I have some like Comic-Con interviews and stuff just for this channel. So that's really awesome. I have a really fun unboxing video, which I can kind of tease. That should be coming up here pretty soon. So all really good stuff that you don't want to miss. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us.